Welcome to Healing the Spirit, a space where we awaken our creativity, deepen our connections, and remember who we are through the lens of astrology, archetypes, and art making. I'm your host, Jonathan Coe. Hello everyone, welcome to Healing the Spirit. I want to speak about moments of transition and change. Specifically, there's a kind of illusion that tends to set in during moments in our lives where things seem to be changing rapidly. Regardless of the nature of change itself, time and time again, I see the same pattern reiterating, reinforcing itself, which is that we forget about the basics. We forget that there are these basic, essential practices and principles for how to be in the world. And just because our reality is shifting, just because our circumstances are changing at a rapid rate, doesn't mean the principles and the practices won't apply. These practices are usually rooted in principles that are based in mystical laws, and they were helpful to us. We usually found them at a time when we were seeking, and we found them, and then we used these practices to help us really ground ourselves in reality and in what is, rather than our ideas about what things need to be. And these practices are foundational, right? And the reason why they work is because they honor some principles of how reality organizes itself. And it's easy, because they're so foundational, it's easy to take them for granted. It's easy to forget that they actually will still apply, especially in moments where it seems like everything's changing and everything feels like an emergency. What's challenging about these moments of transition is that we can lose our orientation. What was once important, what was once anchor points for our attention and anchor points for our sense of identity, may not even be there anymore. And that presents a really unique challenge, right? In other words, we are being asked in these moments to really pay attention and recognize the invisible threads of reality, even when the visible threads seem to be unraveling itself. So let's take an example to really bring this into the concrete. Let's say you lose your job. This job is not just a source of income, right? The job also grounds you within a specific version of reality. This job maybe asks you to go to the office every morning. So you have to wake up at a specific time, you have to get ready within a specific time frame, and then you have to drive to your office. Now, when this job leaves your reality, you're no longer required to wake up at a specific time. You're no longer needing to get ready within that time frame, and you're no longer doing that commute. And we may not realize it, but the loss of that ritual is often just as destabilizing to our animal body as the loss of the job itself. Now, in our lives, we inevitably come to these moments of transition that are bigger in scale. Certain transitions are simply interruptions. They're not really an ending of an era, right? These moments of interruptions are moments where we're generally still moving in the same direction, but we're simply being asked to temporarily pivot. Maybe we're asked to slow down or to change direction a little bit, right? Using the example of the job, we're not leaving the career path, We're simply moving on to a different job in a different environment where we have a different manager, right? But the kind of transition I want to speak to here is the bigger kind, the kind where we know that whatever came before largely can't come with us anymore. These are transitions where we can sense that we need to let go of the version of self that's brought us to this point. So, in the example of the job, this is you leaving your career path. This is you taking a complete left turn, right? More than we care to admit, when we really pay attention to the minutiae of our lives are built on a series of tricks and shortcuts, what the kids would call hacks nowadays. We have these ways of being, these sequences that we rely on in order to get us from point A to point B. So, going back to that example of losing your job, where you have to commute, there are actually a million micro decisions that, because you have the job and you are living out one specific slice of reality, every morning you are liberated from thinking about what you need to do that day, because you know that you have to get to your job. These are the steps that are required to get you to your job, and you just perform the steps. These micro habits that you perform every morning becomes this ritual that prevents you from needing to bring consciousness and awareness into every morning. These bigger transitions, the reason why they're challenging, or at least one of them, is because we're being asked to rewrite our scripts. We're being asked to really place our attention on things that we probably for a long time have not needed to place any attention on. We were able to automate it, and then suddenly we have to actually sit here, look at what we're doing, who we are, what's in front of us, and then respond accordingly. And that is energetically expensive. That requires a lot of energy, more so than doing something that's automated where you can half doze off, right? We can no longer rely on the old scripts in these moments, because ultimately these bigger transitions are pointing us to the reality that we're being asked to step into a new version of ourselves, step into the new version of our lives. In musician speak, we're not playing the same songs to a different crowd anymore, right? We're actually going back to the studio, recording whole new bunch of materials and practicing them, and then eventually we'll be maybe going out to a crowd again to play a completely new set of material, right? So one of the things that I see people losing in these moments of more significant transitions is that they forgot that there's this really simple practice of grounding into these moments. The mind plays really funny tricks on us when we're in these more significant transitions. And recently, I discovered why. It's a very subtle reason, but it's significant, which is why I wanted to share it with all of you. In these moments of big transitions, we usually enter a bridge period. We enter a liminal space where we're leaving behind the previous chapter, but we're not yet in the new chapter. And if you've been through these big transitions, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I really think that this is happening more on a gut level, right? Because if you actually look at the reality, there is no such thing as a bridge in life, right? Everything, even the bridge, it's like its own place. But somehow we can feel on a deep level we haven't fully landed yet. And I think that's what I mean by bridge. It's more of a psychological experience. It's more of an internal experience. It's more this mystical search of the soul looking for a new orientation, right? And usually, you're in one of these periods because you would wake up in the morning and you have this gnawing sense that whatever it is that you're doing, no matter what it is, how big or how small, you can tell that it's not it. You can tell that you're not exactly doing what you're meant to be doing or doing it in the way that you're meant to be doing it. Either the what or the how, something is still percolating, something is still shifting. It's still in its process of alchemy. It's not yet at a point of resolution. And you may feel in these moments that you don't yet have the next assignment. So, to use the musician metaphor again, you're no longer playing the same set of songs, but you also haven't received the new set or the new songs from your band leader. So you're kind of noodling around, right? You're improvising somewhat blindly. You're kind of half playing and half trying to figure it out. And for most people, this bridge period is extremely uncomfortable. Extremely, extremely uncomfortable. Because deep down, we suspect that no matter what we do, it's not it. This is not the actual direction we're going towards. But we're also faced with the reality that we still have to live. We still need to get up in the morning. For most of us, we still have bills to pay. We still have to feed ourselves. We still have to clean ourselves. In other words, we still have to chop wood and carry water. And if you're listening to this and you're not personally in one of these periods, I hope you're still following me here because this is absolutely relevant to the collective moment we're in. We're all in a moment of huge consciousness transitions. Perhaps the largest one that we are seeing in our lifetimes. And this consciousness transition isn't exactly, they're not exactly new. They didn't come out of nowhere. If you look at how we've been living in the past, let's say 20 years, you can see that the moment we're in is a step by step towards this direction, right? That actually, when we look back, we can see how all the dots connected. They've been happening for a while. These changes don't come out of nowhere. But the reason why they feel like that is because our minds and our hearts are only now kind of catching up to the reality of the great change. And so we as a collective body, we are experiencing a major sense of unrest. We have this gnawing sense that no matter what it is that we do, we're not going to get it right. Because this moment is transitional and everything is going to get reshuffled in a pretty major way soon. Now, there are many ways to be in this transition. There are many ways to be with this transition. And I don't think that there is a wrong way to be with these great transitions. Now, that being said, I do think that if you are listening to this podcast, you are probably the kind of person who deeply craved the experience of navigating life with grace. You want to navigate life with a conscious sense of self and a conscious sense of connection with your own spirit and spirit at large. And so, as I'm talking about these different ways to be with this transition, I want you to feel into which category you fall under. There's no judgment. There's just apply a kind of genuine openness and sincere curiosity as you're listening to me talk about the different ways we can be with this transition. The first response is for us to just accept that we're in transition and kind of completely relax into it, to recognize there's nothing to do in this period because nothing really matters anyway, and we might as well just take a nap, so to speak. Now, you know you belong in this category if you feel yourself in a major way withdrawing fully from reality as you know it. So what I see when I meet these people in my reality, people who have either consciously or unconsciously chosen this response, they're usually just playing video games. And to a certain extent, I kind of mean that metaphorically, but I also mean that literally. Like some of them are just kind of like stepping back, relaxing, and then they're kind of not doing anything, you know? They're kind of just letting life pass them by as an observer in a way that feels pretty passive unless you are also in that state of consciousness. These are the people who are completely detached. And I have to say, I commend you if you're one of these people because it does take a certain level of emotional and spiritual maturity to be able to allow yourself to get to that point of, oh, well, nothing's going to stick anyway. I might as well just chill out here, right? And then there's another kind of response on the opposite ends of the spectrum, right? So the second response that people tend to have is completely freaking out, right? We can get into this hyper focus, hyper panic mode at the same time. These are people who usually create giant checklists, seemingly never ending, and they are trying to map out every single possible scenario of what could go wrong here. And then they use all their energies trying to anticipate every possibility so that they don't have to feel the discomfort of seeing something going wrong. And if I were completely honest, I would say I probably fall more towards this category. This is probably a spectrum, right? So you can see where you're at, but my internal experience of myself is that I'm more in this category. Maybe not so much in my action, but certainly in my mind. So you know you're in this category if you notice that you can't sleep very well during moments of big transitions because your mind is going a million miles per hour. Maybe during your waking days, you are someone who's resourced and practiced and you have all these different techniques. You know, you go on a walk, you meditate. So when you're conscious, you can easily bring yourself into a sense of relative regulation. But when you're kind of drifting off and you feel yourself not fully consciously in control, you might find that you're actually not relaxed at all. In moments of kind of relative daydreaming, you're finding that you're plotting and you're scheming and you're trying to control for all the possible outcomes. And then, of course, you have people who oscillate between response number 1 and number 2, right? But I would argue that these people who oscillate between number 1 and number 2, myself included, they're probably people who are completely freaking out, actually, but they also spend a lot of energy trying to convince themselves that they're not freaking out, right? And that's, again, no judgment here. I want us to approach all these states with a kind of open curiosity because these are human responses, right? These are animal body responses. And now I want to talk about a third kind of response that is possible. I think there are very few people who are actively practicing being in this response, and even fewer people who are embodying being in this response. And as I'm describing them, I wonder if you have a similar experience here, because whenever I come across these people, I'm quite astonished because they carry themselves very differently than the rest of us. And I'm really flagging these people as my teachers in this moment because they have a different kind of alertness to them that isn't kind of this consciously falling asleep because whatever, we're in a dream anyway, let me wake up when it actually matters, right? They're not in that state, but they're also not in the state of completely freaking out or trying to pretend that they're not freaking out, right? They're walking the middle path where they're keeping one eye in, like one eye turns inwards for them, and the other eye turns outwards. And to me, these people are the sages of our times. And again, they are so rare that whenever I come across one of these people, I'm astonished. It's almost like my whole system is like, what? Who is this person? They really have something to teach me in this moment. And what I am learning about these people is that they are masters of reminding themselves. In fact, it's almost like this process has become automated for them of grounding into moments of transition. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is that they fully honor this moment as its own chapter. You can fully treat moments of transition as if it is a completely legitimate point in the journey. One that is so important that you're not going to ignore it. One that is so important that you're not going to try to run away from it. Response number 3 requires you to fully be in this chapter. Yes, you're moving through a big transition. Yes, you've left behind a previous chapter. And yes, you are not yet in your next chapter. But you are in this chapter. You are standing on this bridge. And instead of treating that bridge as something to either rush out of or to zone out from, these people treat the bridge as a holy place. These people recognize that the bridge is standing on a holy ground. This is the temple where the divine itself resides. This is their burning bush moment where the divine speaks to Moses. This is the Bodhi tree moment where Siddhartha at any moment now is going to be enlightened. Right? This is the desert moment within which Rabbi Yeshua was tempted and then essentially found a way to kind of step out, right, of the frame through which they could be tempted. That moment where you find the divine human activated, unlocked. The bridge is actually its own discrete place. The bridge is actually its own ground. It is its own unique moment in time. And to these people, the bridge deserves their full attention, their full energy, their full presence. And they treat the bridge not as merely functional, not as merely a stairway to heaven, as this intermediary to the divine, right? Instead, they recognize that the bridge is the divine itself. And these people are radiant in moments of transition. These people are glowing with energy that is so magnetic and also so gentle at the same time. They're not people who are imposing because they're not trying to leave. They're not trying to numb themselves. They're fully here. And if you're lucky enough to talk to one of these people or to come across one of these people, you realize the trick is actually very simple. They practice the one thing that the rest of us forget. They recognize that every moment is its own bubble of the divine. They recognize the ground they're currently standing on because the divine is everywhere. They're not denying that the past exists, right? They're not denying that we do have entanglements to the past. We do have connection points to the past. They're not ignoring the call of the future, the seductive call that the future can have on us, right? Whether we perceive the future to be positive or negative, hopeful or pessimistic, the future kind of has this siren call, right? But they don't buy into the illusion that either the past or the future is a problem to solve in order to be in the present. So let me repeat that. They don't buy into the illusion that in order for them to be in the present, they have to somehow resolve the problem of the past or the future. They recognize the only way to be in the present is to be in the present. And if you want to take that even further, the only way to be in right relationship with the past and the future is to be here now. And there's such poetry in that way of being. There's such simplicity and grace because they're not really trying to be anywhere other than where they really are. And so I want to offer that for all of us listening here. You might even find that if you are fully attuned and you allow yourself to slow down enough, maybe you can even find moments where you are in response number 1 or response number 2 or oscillating between the two. And then maybe you even see glimpses within yourself of being in the third response, of being in this posture of full surrender into these moments of transition. And the full surrender doesn't mean that you pretend like you don't care, right? The moment of surrender actually means you are allowing everything in. No resistance, no fighting. You are in flow because you accept the possibility of every moment. So I want to offer that for all of us listening here. I want you to remember that you can practice this way of being. This way of being is simple. It is graceful. What if this chapter of transition that you're in is the holy ground itself? What if you treat this moment as if no other moments exist? What if you allow this chapter to really teach you its wisdom? What if you don't try to run away? What if you don't try to become bigger or smaller than you really are? What if you simply let yourself stay and fully occupy this moment? So I land us with a short prayer here. May my feet be planted on this earth. May my hands move at the intelligence of this moment in time. May my heart and my mind be guided by my spirit. And so it is. I hope this moment, this podcast, this episode, this message, I hope it finds you when you need it. If you have benefited from this work and you would like to financially support the podcast, I invite you to become a paying subscriber on Substack. For those of you who have supported, thank you. And I hope you know that your support is what makes the creation of this project possible. I'm also available for working one-on-one, either if you're interested in having a single session or ongoing guidance. If you are in moments of these big transitions, I welcome you to check out my offerings. And you can also join the newsletter to hear about classes and group immersions that I'm doing. over the years, I found that working with those of you who listen to the podcast is really the best thing ever for me because we know each other, really. If you're listening, especially if you have listened all the way to the end here, we're really speaking the same language. And there's something about how this frequency that I'm picking up on as I'm moving through my reality and I'm consistently always learning from my own life and my own journey, right? As I'm picking up these frequencies and translating them into my own language through my vessel, the fact that it resonates with you means that you're also picking up on the same frequency. And when we work together, we have this opportunity to allow each other to kind of witness, right? Being in the same frequency. And one of the gifts that I know I'm here to share in this world is to be able to put into words the frequency that I'm perceiving. And this is something that I work with people around. That in becoming conscious of the frequency, the energy that is available, and creating space where we give ourselves permission to put that into words and to share that in a space that is open, that has curiosity, that isn't about trying to fix anything, but more about trying to sincerely and genuinely learn from our own lives. That providing spaces that allow that is so valuable, right? And to me, there's nothing more healing than that. There's nothing more healing than working with someone who isn't, who actively is practicing not trying to change you. Because that is really in and of itself an active practice. And of course, through the practice of not trying to change people, people change, right? We know this about ourselves. There's this paradox that when we are not trying to change ourselves, change naturally finds us. Change naturally emerges. And so I really am here. My work is to serve as a mirror and a translator for your energy to find its own natural path. We're already kind of swimming in the same energetic pool. And so if you enjoy this podcast, I invite you to kind of go deeper and we can explore what that looks like. All right. I look forward to being with you again very soon. And I'm sending you all so much love. Take care.